Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents How Can I Forgive You? The Courage to Forgive, the Freedom Not to. Updated edition. By Janis A. Spring, Ph.D., with Michael Spring. Narrated by Exie Sands. Introduction. Is forgiveness good for you? There's a wonderful story about two kids playing in a sandbox together. One gets mad and storms off with his toy truck. As he runs to the swings nearby, he turns and cries out to his playmate, "I hate your guts and I'm never going to talk to you again." About 10 minutes pass, and they're throwing a ball at each other, laughing, enjoying the day. As their parents observe this interaction, one father shakes his head and says to the other with a mix of admiration and amazement, "How do kids do that? How can they be at each other's throat one minute and get along with each other so famously the next?" "It's easy," the other father explains. "They choose happiness over righteousness." I love this story. It's so filled with the bounty of the human spirit, with affirmation of our ability to adapt, to resolve our petty disputes, and focus on what really matters most to us in life. We are social beings who need each other, who inherently prefer to repair interpersonal ruptures than to hate or hold a grudge. Most of us want and like to forgive. The problem with the sandbox story is that it's about children who reconcile after an insignificant grievance. It's not about what happens between two adults when one willfully and maliciously hurts the other, and the hurt party is left to grapple with how to forgive or reconcile with the offender. That's a much more complex story. Some of us believe we have an obligation to forgive, unconditionally, categorically, and that to do so is central to what it means to be a decent human being. Most of us, however, can't live up to such high moral principles except in theory, or feel that we would compromise ourselves if we did. We can't and won't just dust off an injury, pretend that nothing happened, and embrace the person who injured us. Regardless of what we may have been taught, a quick, one-sided kiss-and-make-up response doesn't seem real or right. For genuine forgiveness to take place, we often need much more. What does it mean to forgive? Most of us have been raised on several dubious assumptions that need to be debunked. Let's look at them. Questionable assumption number 1. Forgiving is good for you. When you forgive, you get rid of the poison inside you and restore your health. When you refuse to forgive, you get sick and suffer. Forgiving has been marketed as the new mental and physical panacea, a healing balm that cures every ailment: depression, anxiety, chronic hostility, high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, cancer, and immune deficiencies. It has also been said to repair broken hearts, broken relationships, a broken sense of self. Forgiving is the only remedy for the pain the offender left us with, the only way to heal the hurt he caused, writes Lewis Smedes in The Art of Forgiving. My patients have taught me otherwise. Watching them recover from interpersonal injuries has shown me that you can heal yourself and clear your head of emotional sludge, resentment, rage, hurt, and shame, with or without forgiving. You can release your bitter and obsessive preoccupation with getting even, with or without forgiving. You can make peace with yourself and come to terms with what happened, with or without forgiving. And you can get back together if you choose, without selling yourself short, with or without forgiving. You can do all this for yourself and by yourself, even if the offender is unapologetic, even if he refuses to acknowledge your pain or apply a drop of salve to your wound, even if he has passed on. How Can I Forgive You shows you how. Questionable assumption number 2. Forgiving is the only spiritual and morally sound response to violation. We grow up assuming that forgiving is key to a caring, principled life. But I've learned that you don't need forgiveness to be merciful and feel empathy, even compassion, for the person who hurt you. You can see him as a flawed human being, treat him with unmerited benevolence, and try to understand why he acted the way he did, all without forgiving him. Morally and spiritually, you're no more required to forgive an unrepentant offender than you are to love him. You're free to reserve forgiveness for someone who has the fortitude to admit his culpability and the decency to help release you from the pain he has made you suffer. I would go so far as to say that you don't restore your humanity when you forgive an unapologetic offender. He restores his humanity when he works to earn your forgiveness. Questionable assumption number 3. You have only two choices: forgiving and not forgiving. Most self-help books reinforce the conventional assumption that even when the offender is unrepentant, you have only two options: forgiving and not forgiving. Forced to choose between them, you either dismiss your pain and forgive those who don't deserve it, or you say no to forgiveness and find yourself trapped in a prison of hate. For years, I listened to patients caught in this dilemma and realized that there had to be another solution. The language of forgiveness needed a vocabulary to describe what real people with real injuries do when they make peace with a person who won't apologize. As Rabbi Susan Schnurr points out, such rigid categories, forgiving and not forgiving, make a mockery of the complex continuum or resolution in the aftermath of a betrayal. We may partially forgive, vengefully forgive, contingently forgive, not forgive yet reconcile. We may mourn yet not forgive, achieve understanding yet only forgive certain parts of the betrayal. Become indifferent, become detached. I began wondering, wouldn't it be wonderful if there were a way for us to release all the hate and hurt bundled up inside us, enjoy all the physical and mental health benefits of forgiveness, and live a just and humane life, all without having to forgive a recalcitrant offender? Isn't there something between the all-too-warm fuzziness of forgiving and the impenetrable coldness of not forgiving? Something that says you don't have to hate the offender or exact a pound of flesh, but you don't have to forgive him either. How can I forgive you describes this radical new something. I call it acceptance. Acceptance is a responsible, authentic response to an interpersonal injury when the offender can't or won't engage in the healing process, when he's unwilling or unable to make good. It's a program of self-care, a generous and healing gift to yourself, accomplished by yourself for yourself. It asks nothing of the offender. Acceptance helps you place a premium on your own health and clear your head of emotional poison. Be true to yourself and honor the full force of the violation. Overcome fantasies of revenge while seeking a just resolution. Ensure your emotional and physical safety. Restore and integrate your valued self. See yourself and the offender with objectivity, honesty, and equanimity. Forge a relationship with the offender that satisfies your personal goals, and forgive yourself for your own failings that caused you harm. What I'm suggesting is that we can get back in the sandbox if we choose, even when the other person does nothing to right the wrong he has done. We can opt for no relationship with this person, or a partial and imperfect one. We don't have to dwell on the injury, but we don't have to forget or minimize it either. We don't have to love or even like this person, but we can see him fairly and choose to get along if that's in our best interest. We can be ourselves in his presence and accept that he'll never be anyone other than who he is. We can even give him a chance to do better and earn genuine forgiveness if he chooses to rise to the challenge. Questionable assumption number 4. It is up to you, the person who was violated, to forgive. So much of the literature on forgiveness has been written specifically for you, the hurt party, telling you what you need to do to grant forgiveness, rather than telling the offender what he needs to do to earn forgiveness. This single-minded focus, I believe, has compromised, twisted, and cheapened the process of forgiveness and created a saintly, abstract concept that many of us feel pressured to accept at any cost. The rest of us, however, are likely to choke on this idea and reject it as unrealistic, disingenuous, and unjust. We refuse to believe that it's real or right to have to shoulder the burden of forgiveness alone. We'd rather not forgive than forgive unilaterally. I'm reminded of my patient's response when, in trying to help her recover from her partner's affair, I suggested that she consider medication to control her obsessions. I have to deal with my shattered sense of self, my jealousy, my contempt, she raged. And now you want me to take drugs? What does he have to do? Let him take the drugs. Many of you feel the same way about forgiveness. How unfair it seems that the person who hurt you is typically not addressed by moralists or forgiveness experts. How odd that he's rarely called upon to make repairs. At the very least, shouldn't both of you be invited to do the work of forgiveness? My book speaks mainly to you, the hurt party, about what you can do to recover from a profound injustice when the offender is unwilling or unable to make amends. But it also speaks to you, the offender, when you want to be involved in the healing process. There is, in fact, an entire section devoted to you and to what you must do to earn forgiveness, and perhaps, in the process, forgive yourself. Questionable assumption number 5. Forgiveness is an unconditional gift. It does not need to be earned. The idea that you, the hurt party, should gift the offender your forgiveness, even when he's unapologetic and undeserving, is rooted in Christian ethics. In the New Testament, there are numerous exhortations to love your enemy, to pardon those who hurt us, because that's the merciful and compassionate thing to do. Christian or not, most of us grow up believing that forgiveness is required of us without conditions. Behind these teachings is an assumption that if you need something back from the offender in order to forgive, if you believe that forgiveness must be earned rather than gifted, you haven't fully developed as a moral being. The lesson is that you should feel small and ashamed for thinking you are entitled to restitution. It's not my place to debate the ethics of unconditional forgiveness, but my clinical experience working with patients over the past 29 years, observing how people heal and what they need to heal, has taught me that they tend to react in one of three ways. They reject the idea that when you forgive, you ask for nothing in return, and then turn their back on forgiveness because it seems so skewed in favor of the offender. They subscribe to the religious concept of forgiveness and gift it to an unworthy offender, but then feel unresolved, perhaps even cheated or compromised. They say that they subscribe to the ideal of forgiveness, but then, when presented with a real-life situation, they refuse to forgive. I've noticed that whatever their reaction, people struggle to forgive in a way that allows them to maintain a sense of integrity and self-worth, and that they would like support not just from a higher power, but from the offender himself. The popular notion that they're somehow inferior or undeveloped because they want the offender to redress the chaos he has inflicted on their life is particularly damaging to those who lack a healthy sense of entitlement. These are people who forgive too cheaply. For those with a stronger sense of themselves, the idea of forgiving unilaterally and unconditionally often seems misguided, a kind of self-sacrifice or self-immolation. As I've said, you can choose by and for yourself to release an unrepentant offender from your hatred and your desire to harm him. You can gift him your goodwill. You can work to see him objectively, fairly, even compassionately. You can accept him and ask nothing of him. But if you're going to offer him what I call genuine forgiveness, he's going to have to pay a price and join you in an intimate dance. In this unconventional approach to forgiveness, a hard-won transaction takes place as the two of you redress the injury together. Forgiveness is no gratuitous gift from the heart. It must be earned. As you, the offender, perform costly, humbling, heartfelt acts of repair, you, the hurt party, create opportunities for him to come forward and make good. Questionable assumption number 6. We all know how to forgive. If only we open our hearts, forgiveness will flow. Most self-help books talk abstractly and inspirationally about forgiveness as a moral gift, a desire of the heart, a quality of life, but leave you wondering what exactly it means and how to make it happen. Often, forgiveness is defined in such lofty, absolute terms that people can't grasp it, so they throw up their hands instead and conclude it takes a person with a big heart to forgive, bigger than mine. Or they feel compelled to embrace the concept and make some meaningless, robotic gesture of goodwill. The concept of forgiveness carries a heavy weight, more than it can bear. It means so many things to so many people who consider it from different frames of reference, from academicians influenced by grand theological teachings to secular researchers trying to reduce abstruse concepts into manageable bite-sized units that can be studied in laboratory settings. What has evolved is a mishmash of concepts that often do nothing more than confuse and pressure those who are seeking relief from suffering. What is missing is a concrete, down-to-earth vision of forgiveness, one that is human and attainable. I've had the opportunity to observe people firsthand in my clinical practice and to witness their struggles to forgive and be forgiven. The model I developed has grown organically as I've listened to and observed how real people heal after real interpersonal injuries. The examples you will hear ring true because they are true. Questionable assumption number 7. Self-forgiveness doesn't require you, the offender, to make amends to the person you harmed. It's a gift to yourself. The topic of self-forgiveness takes us deep into uncharted waters. Advocates of self-forgiveness often describe it as an internal act, an offering of compassion and love that allows you to feel better about the wrong you inflicted on others. As I define it, self-forgiveness, like genuine forgiveness, is not a free gift to yourself, nor is it a process that goes on privately within your mind. I believe that for self-forgiveness to be substantive, heartfelt, and genuine, it must be earned. If you, the offender, want to forgive yourself, you must acknowledge you're wrong and make amends directly to the person you harmed. If that's not possible, you must perform other acts of repentance and restitution that, in effect, speak out against your offense and demonstrate your commitment not to repeat it. Self-forgiveness is not something you do just to make yourself feel better. It's something you do to make yourself be better. Forgiving yourself and working to win forgiveness from the person you violated go hand in hand. As you earn her respect and forgiveness, you come to respect and forgive yourself. 2 dysfunctional approaches to forgiveness. How can I forgive you describes 4 different approaches to forgiveness: cheap forgiveness, refusing to forgive, acceptance, and genuine forgiveness. The last 2 we have already touched on. Both are adaptive. The other 2 are dysfunctional. Cheap forgiveness. Even if the offender ignores your pain, you may be so frightened of his anger or rejection, so desperate to preserve the relationship that you're willing to do anything, even forgive him. But this forgiveness is premature, superficial, undeserved. I call it cheap because you offer it before you process the impact of the violation, ask anything of the offender, or think through what lies ahead. Refusing to forgive. You may refuse to forgive, 1, when you want to punish an unremorseful offender, 2, when you associate forgiveness with reconciliation or compassion, neither of which you're prepared to offer, and 3, when you use retaliatory rage to protest a violation and see anything more conciliatory, particularly forgiveness, as a sign of weakness. Not forgiving makes you feel powerful and in control, but it's a reactive, often rigid and compulsive response to violation that cuts you off from life and leaves you stewing in your own hostile juices. The 4 approaches to forgiveness, a comparison. The accompanying chart summarizes the differences among the 4 approaches to forgiveness. Cheap forgiveness. The hurt party comes to terms with the injury. No. The offender participates in the healing process. No. This leads to reconciliation. Yes. Refusing to forgive. The hurt party comes to terms with the injury. No. The offender participates in the healing process. No. This leads to reconciliation. No. Acceptance. The hurt party comes to terms with the injury. Yes. The offender participates in the healing process. No. This leads to reconciliation. Yes or no. Genuine forgiveness. The hurt party comes to terms with the injury. Yes. The offender participates in the healing process. Yes. This leads to reconciliation. Yes, often, or no. How this book is written and organized. How Can I Forgive You provides concrete, detailed, step-by-step instructions for both of you as you cut a path to forgiveness. It's divided into 4 parts. 1, cheap forgiveness. 2, refusing to forgive. 3, acceptance. And 4, genuine forgiveness. The first, second, and third parts are written mainly for the hurt party. The 4th part, genuine forgiveness, is divided into 2 sections. The first shows the offender what it takes to earn forgiveness. The second shows the hurt party what it takes to grant forgiveness. In this second edition of How Can I Forgive You, I include an afterword in which patients share their relationship struggles, and I offer concrete advice and exercises to help them heal. For the sake of clarity, I refer to one of you as the hurt or injured party and to the other as the offender, fully aware that with interpersonal injuries, we are seldom completely guilty or completely innocent. Also, I speak of the hurt party as she and the offender as he. Gender does not determine guilt, of course, but identifying each of you in this way makes for a more digestible book. All the case studies I describe are true, in the sense that they're based on my work with patients or my conversations with associates and friends. Some people may be hurt or insulted by the way I modified their stories. Others may be relieved. One should know that I've always changed names and details, and that I've developed composite portraits to protect people's identities and illustrate certain points. My clinical examples run from the serious to the profane, from a deliberate predatory act of sexual abuse to a clumsy act of spilling wine on a countertop. However, I don't quantify the magnitude of the harm that was done for 2 reasons. First, the basic critical tools that are needed for healing are largely the same for all injuries. Second, the severity with which someone experiences an injury is highly subjective. A slap to one of you may be a death blow to another. Many of you have asked for a follow-up to my first book, After the Affair. I appreciate your loyalty and have included here many case studies related to infidelity, but I've now widened my scope to include all significant violations of human connection. Examples include a spouse who treats you with contempt for not living up to his or her own impossible standards, a friend who turns away from you when you develop breast cancer, a sibling who refuses to help you care for an elderly parent, a parent who is too depressed or too drunk to take interest in you, and a therapist who traumatizes you as deeply as the offender himself. A radical choice. When I give professional training workshops, I invite therapists to come to the microphone and talk about someone who has offended them and how they're coping with the violation. What I find over and over is that we're all struggling to forgive someone and hate feeling fractured within our significant relationships and within ourselves. We are all searching for an answer, some new approach that frees us from the corrosive effects of hate, gives voice to the injustice, and helps us to make peace with the person who hurt us and with ourselves. Most of us are also struggling with the knowledge that we have mistreated others. We, too, are looking for a way to feel more human and integrated, less alienated and embattled. We can make ourselves feel right by feeling wronged, buying into our biased, self-righteous version of the truth, and blaming the person we hurt. But we won't feel good about ourselves until we clean up the damage we caused. For those of you who have done wrong, I encourage you, in fact, I hope to help you, to muster up the honesty, maturity, and strength of character to reach out to the person you have hurt, and make an earnest, big-hearted effort to win her forgiveness. If you accept the challenge, I doubt you'll be sorry. For those of you who have been wronged, I encourage you to take care of yourself, be fair, and seek life-serving ways to cleanse your intimate wound. By providing two adaptive alternatives, acceptance and genuine forgiveness, I hope I can give you the courage to forgive and the freedom not to. Part 1. Cheap forgiveness. Cheap forgiveness is a quick and easy pardon with no processing of emotion and no coming to terms with the injury. It's a compulsive, unconditional, unilateral attempt at peacemaking for which you ask nothing in return. When you refuse to forgive, you hold tenaciously to your anger. When you forgive cheaply, you simply let your anger go. When you refuse to forgive, you say no way to any future reconciliation. When you forgive cheaply, you seek to preserve the relationship at any cost, including your own integrity and safety. Cheap forgiveness is dysfunctional because it creates an illusion of closeness when nothing has been faced or resolved, and the offender has done nothing to earn it. Silencing your anguish and indignation, you fail to acknowledge or appreciate the harm that was done to you. If you forgive too easily, you're likely to have what personality expert Robert Emmons calls a chronic concern to be in benevolent, harmonious relationships with others. The character trait that defines you could, in fact, be called forgivingness. While some people would regard forgivingness as a virtue, Emmons calls it spiritual intelligence. I would suggest that it can rob you of your freedom to respond to an injury in an authentic, self-interested way. It can also be bad for your health, as we'll see later. When you feel compelled to forgive regardless of the circumstances, you're offering not genuine forgiveness, but a cut-rate substitute. People who forgive too cheaply. Cheap forgiveness comes in several forms. You may recognize yourself in one of them. The conflict avoider. This is the most common type. Overly compliant and forgiving, you tend to dismiss an injury for the sake of protecting a relationship, as mutilating as it may be. On the surface, you act as though nothing is wrong. Inside, you may be hemorrhaging. Conflict avoiders remain in relationships without voice and without a healthy sense of entitlement. Your submissive behavior, your tendency to subjugate your needs to those of others, is often based on one of three fears. 1. You fear that the offender will retaliate with anger or violence. If you grow up with rageful parents, you may learn to keep silent, to go along in order to get along. This pattern is likely to persist into adulthood, as it did for a patient named Marcia. My parents' anger was frightening, she told me. I remember the day my mother threw over the ping-pong table and my father, drunk, chased her with a gun. I locked myself in my room and couldn't eat or sleep for days. Living with them, I learned to pick my words carefully, to lie low. I hated them both and got married at 16 just to get out of the house. To this day, I'm not good at anger. It scares me. I never even allow myself to feel anger. God knows where it goes. 2. You fear that the offender will reject or abandon you. You may also resort to cheap forgiveness because you fear being cast off by someone whom you depend on for a sense of self-worth. This morbid dependence is like insulin to a diabetic. It is not optional. It is a necessary lifeline. Kathy, a 47-year-old massage therapist, is a case in point. Desperate to hold on to her husband, Jack, she left herself no space in which to negotiate her needs. I think of myself as a love junkie, she told me. Why else would I stay in such a sick relationship? Jack drinks too much, he cheats on me, he lashes out at me verbally and sometimes physically. What happened last week should have been a wake-up call, but I shut off the alarm. We were on vacation watching a video, and Jack was drinking. I asked him, "What do you want to do for dinner?" And he blurted out, "You've ruined my life," and then slapped me, and told me how much he hated me, and started in about how I was making him miss the end of the movie and how he wanted to kill me. A little over the top, wouldn't you say? And then he started to cry and tell me he hated himself and didn't know why he was so cruel to me. I know if I were healthy, I'd leave. But I'm stuck here, trying to be good enough for him, the way I tried to be good enough for my mother. She used to tell me if it weren't for your younger sister, I'd have no reason to live. That's how much I meant to her. I guess I'm still trying to get her, someone, to love me, even if they're as messed up as I am. Needing to stay connected to Jack in order to affirm her own worth, Kathy constantly made excuses for his behavior. "It's the alcohol," she told me once. "The alcohol makes him violent." Or, "It's his low self-esteem, that's why he drinks. He projects his self-hatred on me, but he doesn't mean to be so mean." And shortly after he slapped her and told her how much he hated her, she told me, "We're closer than we've ever been." Making excuses for Jack's violent, uncontrollable behavior and deluding herself about his capacity for change kept Kathy trapped in a dangerous relationship. But without Jack, she was without a self. And that felt more terrifying than his degrading words or his physical abuse. 3. You fear that by speaking up for yourself, you may harm the offender. Another reason for cheap forgiveness is your fear that you'll wound the offender if you confront him with the truth. Overprotective of his feelings and dismissive of your own, you exaggerate his fragility and your capacity to cause harm. A patient named Peggy was driven by this concern for others. For 17 years, she satisfied her husband Ted's need for sexual novelty and tolerated his voyeuristic obsession with pornography. She allowed him to see what he called a sexual enhancement counselor naked in the woman's office. She agreed once to group sex with neighbors. "This way I'll have no reason to cheat on you or leave you," he told her. One day, Ted asked Peggy to dress up like a hooker, go to a bar, and try to pick up other men while he looked on. Reluctantly, she played along. She never actually left the bar with anyone, but in the following days and weeks, she found herself feeling increasingly depressed and disgusted with herself. She was still determined to forgive Ted, though, as she had always forgiven him, and went in search of confirmation from her 29-year-old daughter, Rose. "I stayed with your father all these years to keep the family together, and I would like your sympathy and support," Peggy told her. Rose's cold response was a rude awakening. "I'm almost 30, she said. "Don't lay this on me. Whatever you're doing is for your sake, not mine. Do you really want me to be grateful that you sacrificed your life for me? That you gave up your happiness for mine? That's a gift I don't need, thank you. Is this what you've wanted to teach me all these years? That I should stay in a marriage and try to make it work, no matter how awful my partner treats me? Is that the lesson I'm supposed to come away with?" Shaken by her daughter's response, Peggy entered therapy and began to question why she failed to draw a line. Why she felt so desperate to keep Ted happy that she would sacrifice every shred of self-respect for him. "Do I tolerate too much?" she asked me. "Why don't I speak up about what matters to me?" Delving into her past, Peggy answered her own questions. "My parents separated when I was 10, she told me. It was a bitter divorce that tore the family apart. And I got caught in the middle. They asked me which one I wanted to live with. I knew my mother would never forgive me if I left her, so I chose her, but it killed my relationship with my father. Frankly, it killed my relationship with my mother, too. I vowed that when I grew up, I'd create a different climate for my own family. I swore my marriage would be different." Peggy's idea that she needed to preserve her marriage for her daughter's sake or for some greater good no longer made sense to her, if it ever had. Rose is grown up and has a life of her own, Peggy told me.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?